me great pleasure to welcome you to the PRAXIS 2023 conference, and I look forward to meeting you over the course of the day. At ISIS Malaysia, our primary mission is to provide in-depth research, analysis, and policy proposals on strategic international and domestic issues that affect the vital interests of the nation. Our work on the domestic front centers on PRAXIS, which is our flagship domestic-focused conference, guided by the central tenet of translating theory into practice.
I'd like to thank the organizers, ISIS, for inviting me to deliver the keynote for this year's PRAXIS conference. I was made to understand that this is a yearly event. Thank you, and today let me draw your attention to the care economy. So on my part, at the ministry, I eagerly await the results of today's conference and look forward towards concrete public policy solutions to advance Malaysia's strategic interests. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Our discussions today will culminate in the drafting of a PRAXIS policy brief, which will be prepared and submitted to the relevant policymakers so that everyone here today will have the opportunity to contribute to Malaysia's historical development.
Firstly, the major pillar is that we have a choice and we have a chance to change the narrative to we feed the world, right? Instead of we depending on the world to feed us and by harping on our total food import bill, which is going up. We feed the world. A lot of international agencies, I think most of them, consider Malaysia as a net food exporter for the simple reason that they consider palm oil and palm oil products as food, oils and fats. So that to underscore the point, we have a chance. Because the moment you can change the narrative to we feed the world, we have the moral high ground. We can leverage on this to go on to food diplomacy, counter trade arrangements, etc., which I did when I was in the private sector with Bernas for 8 years.
For the benefit of all the audience here, I think we need to first understand, what do we mean by food security? Maybe most of us will understand food security being food available in the market, on the table, and that's it. But beyond that, when we talk about, Dr. Larry mentioned about the supply and demand, when we talk about food security, we are backed by the definition by the Food and Agriculture Organization, which states that food security is about all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. So you are not only talking about the availability. And when we talk about food security, we also measure the level of our food security by Global Food Security Index. So that is a standard and well-respected global indicator where our country position itself in terms of security, food security.
Well, in the world market situation now, we have 4 major factors that we have to take into account. Number one, these are the trend, important trend. One is decarbonization. We are going for carbon zero. Number 2, meatification. The youngs and the new gen, they are eating more meat, and meat requires lots of resources, land. I think one cow, for example, requires 12 acres compared to poultry, about 12 meters square. And financialization of commodities, the futures trading. Remember 2008, it was partly technical factors that contributed to the high price was the futures activities in the US because of the slowdown of the subprime market, and commercializing of food, where we have all these big companies coming in, big supermarket coming in that deny or making the poor farmers isolated, they couldn't sell to the market. So these are the trends in the world market, right?
We do, in fact, meet the definition. FGV, what we do, does meet the definition of food security, because we make sure that all the products that we produce are made available to the market, and there's also accessibility and stability and utilization of our products. Hence, being a GLC, our target is to have Malaysian households to have at least 50% of their cooking ingredients from FGV. And then through us, the government can assure that Malaysians have their basic cooking ingredients made available, accessible, stable, and nutritious. And I'd like to take this opportunity to also assert that supply and demand dynamics is most paramount into ensuring a high food security level. And production and market data is critical in making decisions accurately so that the right policies and decisions can be made to manage shortages as well as price hikes.
Plan.
And then,
Last but not least, Karim, in the last minute of this session, I would like to take advantage of us playing our role in terms of leveraging on the comparative advantage that we have at home, at our own soil. Change our consumption behavior a little bit. Yeah? Instead of you opt for lettuce, try our ulam raja or all those local ulam that is no less nutritious than what you have in the shelves in the supermarket. So it begins from us, like Prof. Fatima mentioned, it starts from home. Thank you very much.
In today's discussion, we will talk about how we can begin to build those foundations. We will be focusing primarily on social and personal care, the kinds of care that you provide to a child or an elderly on a daily basis. To that, a cradle-to-grave concept takes on a life cycle approach to care, recognizing that care lies on a spectrum from child to elderly care, and that people essentially require care at different stages of their lives.
And why is care economy at the forefront of public discussions and also in policy making? Because I think in the past, care was also important because we have to care for the children, and especially for Malaysia, we do have paid care services just as the domestic maids and all that. But it's more important now because more people need care, yeah? Not just children, but also older persons. So older persons are 60 years and older, although many of them do not require the care, but the majority, when they reach, as they advance in age, will need some kind of care. So we need to have a, we need to look at it seriously because you did mention that Malaysia is aging very fast. What takes France 115 years is only taking Malaysia 25 years, where the proportion of our 65 years and older is slowly crossing the line between the increase in childbirth. Yeah? So the childbirth has decreased by 70% over 7 decades ago when we were independent. So that shows that our demographic shift is really important, and there are issues leading to that.
Traditionally, in Malaysia, when we talk about care, in a study that we just completed last year, yeah, and I think maybe Prof. Norma, I went to her event once, and they have one particular study as well. In Malaysia, when we talk about long-term care or even care, in our study on long-term care, 90% of the so-called our correspondents say that they want to stay with the family. Yeah, so traditionally, when we talk about care, especially for elderly care, it's been always about family care. We are talking about household. The family is the one that is taking care of the elderly. Yeah, but moving forward, would it be still possible? That is the kind of question that we are talking about. Yeah. So, as I mentioned just now, this is traditionally has been taken care by the family. Yeah, but that is comparatively, during the 70s, our fertility rate is about 5.9. Yeah, but today our fertility rate is 1.6. Yeah, so that means during those days in 70s, every household will have about 5 to 6 families. Yeah, like my family, we have 7 of us siblings. For us to take care of our elder, it is not going to be a problem.
Right. So although women live longer, we face significant challenge. And of course, the care economy is also overburdening women, as mentioned before. So I just want to talk to you about the care or longevity economy. The care economy is part of the broader longevity economy. At EPF, we're concerned for two things. Number one, are people prepared for retirement? Do they have the money to purchase the care economy produce, right, products and services? But the other part, what can EPF do in terms of investments to support all of that? But the longevity economy, for your information, is valued around 70 trillion globally. So are we prepared to prepare for all those things? There are tremendous, enormous opportunities in this field. At the same time, the value of unpaid care work by women globally is valued at 10 trillion dollars globally. Yeah? In Malaysia, the value of unpaid work is 2.4 billion. So women are not recognized. And if you look at today's pay, right, for women to catch up with men, it will take 160 years to catch up with the pay of men. So for every $1 a man earns, a woman earns 77 cents. So gender inequity, aging, caring economy, they're all interrelated. And we need a whole of nation approach.
Just to provide some context, let's look closely at one aspect of care economy, the care workers, who happens to be at the center of the care economy ecosystem. You are looking at those who provide care, whether trained or untrained, mostly women, and unpaid, and if they get paid, the pay is low. But you're also looking at care workers such as nurses, therapists, psychologists, social workers, counselors, also those in the support services such as eateries, those who provide household chores, cooking and grocery shopping, food suppliers, housing developers, care products producers like special needs equipment, beds, wheelchairs, etc. So if you look at the larger picture of care economy, you can see that there are so many people involved in the care economy ecosystem representing different sectors of the care economy to the point that globally, if care is an economy by itself, it is the third largest economy in the world after the US and China.
So it cannot be a single solution that will solve everything. So that's why it's a whole of nation approach. We require all the different stakeholders to go. But if I can come back to EPF, because I didn't mention that before. So I think EPF's biggest challenge is to look at coverage extension.
I believe all of you might know that semiconductor is the heart of all our electronic products today. If you are wearing some wearable technology products, chances are they are made from some chips that have been assembled and tested here in Malaysia by companies that are based in Penang. Yeah? And just to give you a bit more context, the fact that a lot of market research has actually forecasted that by 2025, 20 to 30 billion IoT devices will be available in the world. And that's 4-5 times more than there are people globally. Yeah?
Broadly, what we are seeing now is a major departure of what we have seen in the last 20 years. Over the last, well, let's say if we begin in 2001. In 2001, China joined WTO. And there was a period of time where there were very little investment into manufacturing in Malaysia and around the region. So for quite an extended period of time, manufacturing investment went into China and very little else came to this region. And Malaysia played at the low end. Essentially the Malaysian economy over the last 20 years was about low productivity, low wage with foreign workers, with very little improvement in productivity. But things have changed massively. The world is no longer about just in time, the world is now about just in case. And we're now seeing de-risking, decoupling, moving away from China, China plus one, China for China market, outside China, Asia minus China, a different set of arrangement.
But in the case of India, I think the opportunity for automation companies is high because we do have the skill. I will believe easily automation company has been in support from all these semiconductors for more than 30 years at least. Yeah? And they do a really good job. Yeah? So I know the government is working on this new thing, but even with these automation companies, we are still focus on two things, custom-built equipment, which ends up the quantity is very few, right? Not like the wire bonders, the die bonders, and the encapsulation machine where company buys in thousands. This one maybe buy in 5 or 10s, So we need to get ourselves more into those areas, but it requires more investment in that area, right? So that's the big potential for our SME companies to break out of this Malaysian mentality, supporting multinational companies who happen to be in Malaysia. I think we have the skill set to go far beyond, and India is not that far away. And we do have sizable Indian population, which will help to understand the culture over there.
American companies, I think, have known about Malaysia for now over 50 years and really invested in the country. And, we have about, I would say, over 50 semiconductor companies in our membership. It's one of the interesting facts that we found out relatively recently was that of the 38% that is exported from Malaysia, 50% of that actually sits in our membership. So it's quite a powerful membership. And I think one of the things that, and a testament to the investments the Americans have put in here. And I think one of the things that they've come here for is because it is a competitive landscape, they found Malaysia to be a really, really good place to land. It has the right geographical location. It has the stability of governance. It's got good commercial law. And so we've had that competitiveness. But it also has talent. And I think that's one of the things that our companies here have really, really focused on is developing the talent, not just in the individuals that they hire, but also the local SME talent. And I think through the vendor development programs that many companies have, not just the American companies, but also the Europeans, and they work very hard to develop the ecosystem over the last 50 years. And now that has put Malaysia into that competitive space. And why, as YJ said, they're not going to greenfield because they're building on something that's already here.
We've added up all the product of Infineon technology in terms of energy saving. All the product, of course, with a certain formula, we save the cumulative of energy spending of the whole Malaysia for one whole year. With Kulim that we announced, we will triple it. That means we want to, all the product that we produce will save the cumulated energy consumption of the whole Malaysia 3 years cumulatively. That is what Infineon all about. I mean, firstly, for people, I will rank this as the most significant, I would say, advantage or factors that we have the capable and well-educated workforce in Malaysia over the years. We have been able to build out the workforces in multi-discipline. I mean,
our factories are competing with two, what they call outflow. One, of course, the engineers to Singapore. Second, technicians to become, our factories are competing and losing technicians to Grab and to Foodpanda. Okay? All because we have an outdated view about pay, which is why in the new industrial master plan, one of the 3 outcomes that we hope to see is that by 2030, manufacturing medium wage will reach 4,510 ringgit.
As we now approach the final segment of Praxis 2023, it is a great pleasure and a profound honor to welcome the Minister of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change. Yang Mohamad Minister, I am pleased to inform you that we are gathered here to address some of the most pressing issues that Malaysia faces at the 60th year of formation.
A nature-positive economy, as we see it, aims to foster a sustainable development model that restores, protects, and enhances natural ecosystems while contributing to economic growth and equitable wealth generation for the people. This represents a paradigm shift from the traditional development model wherein economic objectives are paramount. Rather, what must happen moving forward is for development to occur in harmony rather than at the expense of natural ecosystems. And this is not something that is foreign. The world in general has been basically doing that up until the onset of the Industrial Revolution. The need for this is incontrovertible. The UN has stated that climate change is the defining issue of our time, and we are at a defining moment. The Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, remarked that the era of global warming has ended and that the era of global boiling has arrived. From a policy-making standpoint, the government has a responsibility to lead without hesitation. We must come together to identify synergies between the needs of the planet, the government's objectives, the private sector imperatives, and the people's best interests. What is very, very crucial, I think, is also to learn that we must make the case for environmental protection, for conservation, for protecting our planet.
For a country like Malaysia, when it comes to even climate change, as was mentioned by the minister just now, our contribution is very small, I think less than 1% of the GHG emissions from Malaysia. But as a responsible member of the international community, we are here to work along with other nations to try to make it a better world.
So what is the kind of enabling environment required? So you've got foundation conditions, driver conditions. What if we were to recast what we accepted as foundation conditions? So for example, how land needs to be gazetted and de-gazetted with full transparency, livelihood of the indigenous peoples or rights of humans, as the United Nations General Assembly has agreed, and whether this can be encapsulated, for example, via a charter or a bill of guarantees. If we're willing to do this for foreign direct investment, for example, with the multimedia super corridor, why can't we do this for ourselves, for example? Or terms of involvement of NGOs at a state level. Why are some states more receptive to NGOs and some are more hostile? Can we recast a level playing field? Because NGOs are such important stakeholders. We might be sitting in this overcooled room, speaking about what needs to be done, but NGOs are the boots on the ground who are actually doing the hard work. So could that be part of the bill of guarantees or charters that we are talking about? The rights of businesses when it comes to extraction from the environment. So we are a net exporting nation. Exports are 70% of our GDP, and we're exporting to trading partners who are obviously not paying full value for this. So what are the rights here, and how do we start to price negative externalities or a payment for ecosystem services?
So I have 4 things to recommend to improve such things. So I did prepare something. Number 1, policies created in federal and impacts on the state regards to nature, positive economies or climate change or similar should be co-created with at least the 3 regions, Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah, Sarawak. And I say co-created is very different from being consulted upon. I find many times when people ask me to say, hey, what's your input on this draft policy? I ended up getting frustrated because the design is wrong. Then number 2, I ended up, since I have to do something, I become a wordsmith or editor. So I correct the language rather than the concept. In my opinion, that's a waste of my time. And eventually, even by the time you do a fancy policy, you'll have the other state governments, this being a very sensitive topic, reject the whole idea. So I think co-creation from the very beginning is important, not just consultation.
Knowledge that there's a lot of uncertainties, and especially when trying to do something new, like putting together a mechanism which no one else has ever tried to do. There's a lot of uncertainties. I think there needs to be some understanding that there will be risks, but how to minimize the risks and the risks of failures. and to be transparent about it. Yeah, and I think the other lesson we learn is to engage with the government early, because then you understand how to be aligned with the initiatives and targets and the government's direction. Otherwise, when we're not aligned, okay, sometimes the private sector has to move forward first. And then I think the important thing is that at some point we need to align, because otherwise it doesn't match and it will be redundant in a way.
Of course, to ensure the rights of local indigenous communities are upheld is, of course, to engage with them, to speak with them, to keep them involved, and also to be involved with these local communities, because local communities and indigenous communities should be involved in decision-making processes, especially on conservation financing projects. They should be consulted and informed about the project's objectives, benefits, and potential impacts on their livelihoods and their environments. In Peninsular Malaysia, as we know, the Orang Asli community rely on the forests to live. Literally everything from the forest is their life. Medicinal herbs, wild animals, water, it's very, very important to them. And as Dato' Daryl mentioned earlier, I am from Sabah myself. I am part of an indigenous community, so I understand that there is also understanding for indigenous practices that should be respected when taking into account projects like this.
And for that, you need to be open for deeper and more meaningful interactions, consultations. This is a massive opportunity for us to crowdsource. It stands to reason, if this is an existential crisis, that there's tremendous value to be created. And multiple stakeholders need to perceive that they are benefiting from whatever the transaction or the project or the program is.
Of course, we have now reached that part of the day where we wrap up our deliberations. To begin with, we are very grateful that two ministers were amenable to giving the keynote addresses. In the morning, we heard the keynote address of Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Hajah Nancy Shukri, where she rightly emphasized the importance of establishing a professionalized care sector, one that is accessible to all Malaysians. This is an imperative of national importance as the people age and as the need for care increases. So here I have to add a slight caveat, as T.S. Eliot reminds us, between the ideal and the reality falls that shadow. And I think it is conferences like this and with the help of all of you experts and participants that we are able to get out of the shadow into the light. So in the afternoon, we heard from Yang Berhormat Nik Nazmi, Nik Ahmad. His keynote addressed the dichotomy between economic imperatives and that of our environment, biodiversity, and planet. Moving forward, it is evident that a business-as-usual situation will not suffice, and changes must be made across the board. Meanwhile, the 4 sessions we had throughout the day deliberated on 4 major matters of strategic national importance: food security, the care economy, the semiconductor industry, and the need for a nature-positive economy. Mind you, and each and every one of these could stand alone as a major conference by itself. As we bring the PRAXIS 2023 conference to an end, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks once again to both Datuk Sri Hajah Nancy Shukri and Tuan Nik Nazmi and the speakers and moderators. Lastly, I would like to express my thanks to my colleagues at ISIS Malaysia who have worked tirelessly to ensure the successful organization of today's conference. Thank you.